It's been so long since I felt your skin. It's been so long since I listened in to one of your shells and the song of your sea. Princess of the ocean, won't you come with me? Take my hand and come with me, darling, down to the shoreline.
Hello and welcome to the Nature Garden podcast with me, Carl Steinson, and the Weekending Show team from Lionheart Radio. Come along with us as we take a bonny wee wander along nature paths, shorelines, riverbanks, through woods and wetlands, parks and gardens, and it's a chance to hear some great Northumbrian stories and voices. In this episode, Tom Pattinson's looking at gardening and how it can save the day again during lockdown 2, and he's full of beans and growing some great things for the kitchen. Steve Lowe wants us all to do our bit to help save the hedgehog. Tom Cadwallender is continuing his autumn diary and tracking pink-footed geese. Plus we'll have some top tips from Tom and some jobs for the week in the garden, all coming up on the Nature Garden podcast.
Take my hand and come with me, darling, down to the shoreline. Take my hand and come with me, darling, down to the shoreline.
There's a bit of a sense of deja vu around here as we head into lockdown 2, but panic not, folks. Tom's here with some brilliant ideas and things to do to help us all get through it. Over to you, Tom.
We're 3 days into a second lockdown. Not good news. And my feeling is, from a gardening point of view, I can cope with this because we gardeners are a fairly resolute lot. We're philosophical about things. We have to be. We take knockbacks with the weather, crops failing, etc. You can think of instances where, personally, 1 year in the spring, the potato shoots had just risen above soil level and a late frost came and blackened them off overnight. We started again and we still had some potatoes a little bit later. And then there was the mega time when a storm came and wrecked my lovely red cedar timber Alton greenhouse when it was in full flow with seedlings emerging in spring and shoots on the grapevine. We had it cleared away and started again. So we're fairly philosophical about things and we can cope. But we have to have strategies to deal with the situation, of course, got to think it through. The big difference for me between March lockdown and this one is that in March we had spring to look forward to and summer beyond that. And the thought of, we can get into the garden at least, and solitude perhaps, but we'll be growing our crops and that will keep us busy, happy, thinking about things that are developing around us. I found that quite relaxing, actually. Now we're going into winter, a different kettle of fish altogether, because there are a limited number of times in winter we can get out into the garden. But we develop strategies for having indoor gardening activities. So it's not half as bad as we think. It couldn't happen at a worse time, actually, because this is nature's planting time. It's recognised in this country as a time we can introduce new fruit bushes, trees, shrubs, ornamental shrubs, herbaceous perennials, alpines, heathers, that sort of thing into the garden. And the garden centres are stocked up with them. And it's so easy just to pop along, select what you want, get home, get them planted. I did check the government outline of what the conditions would be, and it did say to me on Wednesday morning online that garden centres can remain open. Thank goodness for that. They're a lifeline. If a case came that they could not remain open, we just have to get things online. But it's so important to have jobs lined up indoors, or things that can get you involved in gardening oriented activities. And the obvious one for me is I always surround myself with catalogues, the latest gardening catalogues, because a collection of those is like having a library at your disposal. The depth of articles in there and the instructions on cultivation and varieties, etc. There really is a lot in, and they're free of charge, most of them. All you have to do is, for the cost of a postage stamp, a phone call, or going online, contact the firms if you have in mind, and they'll send you a catalogue free through the post. And you don't necessarily have to buy anything. You've got the information there in front of you. Some catalogues will cost you a penny or two. There's one which they call it their Handbook of Roses, David Austin Roses. And it's a catalogue. My goodness, the information in there, everything you need to know about roses. Last time I bought one, it was about £1 or something like that. It was I just keep thumbing over it. And you know, if you've got a collection of catalogues in front of you, it's like you can spend an hour in an armchair if there's nothing else to do, odd jobs in the house or around about. And I just drift into them, and I find them so encouraging, and it makes you plan and think ahead, remain positive. And that, during a time of lockdown, is really something strong as far as I'm concerned. Remain positive. I'll give you some more ideas in a few minutes of activities you can get up to indoors, not just for you, but for the youngsters, for the family.
According to conservation organisations who've worked together to produce the first official red list for British mammals with the International Union for Conservation of Nature, a quarter of British mammals are at risk of extinction. Hedgehogs are unfortunately on the list, and Steve Lowe from the Northumberland Rivers Trust has been looking at how we can all play a part in helping our beautiful hedgehogs.
Have you got a hedgehog in your garden? A hedge pig? Well, if you have, can you let us know about it, please? The Environmental Records Information Centre, which is based at the Hancock Museum in Newcastle, would love those records because hedgehogs are actually in big decline. Now, I think we're quite fortunate in this part of the world that we still have pretty reasonable numbers. They're quite regularly seen. In fact, I get one in my garden every single year. And even my son, who's got a fenced garden, has had them in there because they can climb. But we're actually seeing a big decline in this beautiful little animal for a variety of reasons. Now, the biggest one, I suspect, is the roads. I mean, most of us have seen that they're not very particularly good with the old green cross code, and sadly we do see quite a lot of them dead on roads. Well, that's a record, so that's worth also telling people about if possible. The other reason is I think we're losing the green space in some of our own urban areas much more frequently and quickly than we anticipated. So, you know, I've seen a number of people that have been putting down plastic grass. I can't see the point in that myself, apart from a little bit of labour, but it doesn't benefit any of these insectivorous animals like hedgehogs. The other thing that's having a big impact as well is slug pellets. Now, as a gardener, I don't use any kind of chemicals in my garden, and a hedgehog is my slug deterrent. But for a lot of people, they're still putting down these chemicals, which are very easily purchased and yet are absolutely fatal to animals like hedgehogs. if a slug has actually ingested any of that poison material, then it what's called bioaccumulates inside a hedgehog's body when they eat the slugs, whether they be dead or alive. And as a result of that, then that causes poisoning for them, which can, kill them outright, but also can probably have an impact in terms of the way that their brains work. Because we do know that metaldehyde, which is one of the main ingredients in in slug pellets, is actually also responsible in humans for issues like Parkinson's, etc. And believe it or not, metaldehyde is actually used on farmland as well, so it therefore gets washed into rivers and becomes available in the environment to cause further problems. Now, interestingly, this was banned as recently as a year and a half ago, but because of some kind of legal challenge, it was actually brought back onto the market. Now, I know that the government are trying to ban it again, so that would be great. But they often do that, but the stuff is still available for purchase in shops. When I say they ban it, they're banning it for agricultural use and not really for domestic use. And yet, we could have all of this sitting around as a little bit of a time bomb for us. So firstly, I'm just appealing, please send us your records. Secondly, if you've got this stuff, don't use it. Dispose of it safely. But also, at this time of year, when you're gathering up your leaves, have a mind to the fact that there may be a hedgehog around and that it'll need somewhere to spend the winter. Once they go into hibernation, they stay there pretty much throughout the winter. And on the occasions that you might see one, you might see them occasionally because they'll come out every so often and have a little mooch around. But if you see them regularly through the winter, then that animal is not well. And if you are thinking about actually feeding hedgehogs in your garden, then please don't use milk or bread because they can't digest it. In fact, it gives them the squits. Let's call a spade a spade. And as a result of that, then they lose body condition, and that's unlikely that they would therefore survive the winter. So use things like mealworms, bit of cat food, bit of dog food, obviously not loads of it. And if you can provide a little bit of shelter for them, that's even better. It's quite easy to make a hedgehog box. Honestly, if you came to look at my garden, you think, does he ever do anything here? Because any bits of timber and stuff like that falls off trees, I put them together and create little places for animals to hide. And I use the leaves to cover it over as well and give it a little bit more space. Easy to do. You can purchase hedgehog homes if you want to. You can easily make one yourself. I would recommend that. But these animals are beautiful and really need our help. So anything you can do, any advice I've given there, hopefully it'll be of assistance.
You can find out loads of things, by the way, about hedgehogs, including activities for children, on the Great North Museum Hancock Facebook page. That's the Great North Museum Hancock Facebook page. And don't forget, if you do find an injured hog, please do call your local hedgehog rescue centre. And a muckle big hearty thanks to all those great people that run them. Now, you might think it's getting a bit tricky to start to grow things since it's November and getting a bit cad, but Tom's getting busy growing fresh fruits for the stir-fry, salad, or even a sandwich, and it's easy to do. Here's Tom and some nifty, thrifty tips.
Winter gardening is tricky at the best of times. So you've got to have something up your sleeve to keep you occupied, and especially if there are children around the household, if they can be introduced into growing things and having almost instant success, well, where's the problem? And that's what comes with growing bean sprouts. That's mung beans and zucchini beans, alfalfa, spicy fenugreek, that sort of thing. I've done this for years, and it's one of my favourite little things in winter. I've got what I call a growing chamber. It's a large glass jar. It used to be called sweetie jars, all the sweets in. And instead of the screwed end to it, the lid, I have muslin over the edge, fixed on with a rubber band. That's my growing chamber for my bean sprouts. So I buy a packet of, generally have them to hand. You can get a packet of about 1,000 seeds for £3 in that area. Quite useful, give or take 1,000. And when you feel like it, start them off one day, and within 7 days you've got some bean sprouts to eat. Use them in a salad, raw salad, or stir fry, that sort of thing. Very nutritious too. I generally put the beans in, the seeds into the growing chamber, fill it with water, ease it off, drain it off easily so it's moisture inside there, and then I pop it into the airing cupboard where it's warm and it's dark. And I inspect it every morning, and each morning you see them growing a little bit more. And when they're ready, shoot, get them out within a week. That's good for children and good for us, nutritious too. The seed catalogues, for example, Sutton's, they advertise them and they say grow them on damp cloth or something of that nature. Well, you can, but this system I've got keeps everything under control, and it's interesting. It works anyway. So there's also a garden pea called Twinkle, and it's a good crop to grow indoors in a seed tray over leading up to Christmas, of course, over winter, any time of year. You get about probably something like, what do they cost? Something about £3 as well for a packet, and you get quite a lot of seeds in a packet. So when you feel like it, and that's on a cut and come again basis, just like the leaf lettuce. You grow the crop, started off in warmth, moderate warmth. Within 3 weeks, you can start harvesting these pea shoots. That's pea Twinkle. Another thing is bulbs. If you haven't planted a hyacinth and watch it develop, or you haven't done the paper white narcissi, put them into pots. They're so fragrant, those two. You can watch them developing and enjoy them when they're flowering. Gorgeous flowers, gorgeous fragrance. Amaryllis, the lily, the hippeastrum, big bulb, expensive, perhaps £8 or so for the bulb, maybe £10-12 for a pack containing a bowl to grow it in, the compost and the bulb. But what delight in watching it develop, like a skyrocket daily, shooting towards its main flowering stem, towards the sky, and then bursting out the top with trumpet-like flowers, 2, 3, 4 different colours. Super. Want to try some pips and stones of fruits you've been eating? Things like the avocado pear spring to mind. Put some cocktail sticks in that, get a glass of water and balance it over the top so it's just touching the water. Fill it with water, of course, the glass. Balance it on cocktail sticks and watch it shoot and root. That's the avocado pear stone in the middle of the fruit. Citrus fruits, apple, orange, things of that nature. Pomegranate fruits, you can grow those. Peanuts, ground nuts, I've grown those before, and you just need a bit of warmth. Leave the shell on, crack the shell, plant them, give them warmth into a soil, compost, and they develop a flower which comes up, and then it turns around and heads down to the soil on the stem, buries itself, this end of the flower in the stem, into the compost, and that's where the peanut develops, and you dig them like potatoes. Quite a thrill to do that. Takes a short while, you need warmth, probably a propagating frame, but it works.
If you happened to see Autumn Watch this week on the BBC on Thursday night, you might have seen Tom Cadwallender, stalwart of the British Trust for Ornithology, getting a name check for his amazing video of pink-footed geese flying overhead. Well, I bumped into him this week as he was counting birds here on a beautiful sunny morning on Holy Island. And here is his latest report on the lovely honkers known as the pinkfeet.
If you've been down to the coast over the last week or so, your ears will have been having a great treat as well as your eyes, because we've been witnessing a magnificent migration of pink-footed geese. they've been coming south in their thousands, and great skeins of them. They're flying in quite distinct V formations, the classic sort of V formations that we see of geese moving, and they'll kind of change position, and they'll take their turns flying at point and stuff like that. But they've been moving through in huge numbers. It's been absolutely wonderful. And it's quite a privilege. Yeah, and these birds are generally sort of heading off down to Norfolk, to the North Norfolk coast, to spend their winter. And they're coming from Iceland and Greenland, and quite a long way north in Greenland as well. And it's quite incredible, actually. A wonderful sort of sight, wonderful kind of experience. But there are a number of them wintering in Northumberland these days. And there's three main groupings, and we've got a grouping at Druidge Bay, and that is a relatively recent sort of phenomenon. It's 15 odd years ago we saw very few down there, actually, and there's the group at Lindisfarne, and that's one of the reasons why the National Nature Reserve was designated. This species is quite important there. And there's also this group at Millfield, just north of Wooler. But anyway, the vast majority of them are heading down to the North Norfolk coast, and they're coming in their thousands. I remember a few years ago I was doing some work at Montrose in Scotland, and we were counting geese coming in. And Montrose is one of the big stop-off points in the UK for these birds coming down on their migration. And we counted something like 145, 150,000 geese. And that is just amazing. What a spectacle. And it's lodged in my heart, really. And I have a lot of good feelings about pinkfeet. But actually, back in the 1970s and 1980s, we were getting quite concerned about the population. It was actually in quite a steep decline. I don't know what happened, but anyway, they seem to have turned the corner, and the numbers are building quite steadily. And actually, they're very well. They're doing very, very well. And that's probably why we've got so many sort of wintering in Northumberland now, because there's the surplus population, and it's fantastic. Pinkfeet are grey geese, and they look superficially like greylags, but greylags are bigger, and they've got this big orange conch, the bill of it. It's quite a large bill. And by contrast, the pinkfeet, they, as the name suggests, they've got pink feet and pink legs, but they're quite dainty by comparison to greylags. And they'll stand about 18 inches high and 2 feet high, and their bills are quite small by comparison to greylags. And they've got this pink band, and it's got a black tip to it. And it's quite small, but they've got a darkish head as well, dark grey head. But they're absolutely wonderful. And they're coming in their thousands, these birds. And it fills my heart with joy when you hear the wang, 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 as they call to each other as they fly through. Absolutely magnificent. I'm thrilled just thinking about it. Great, pink-throated goose, wonderful.
This is the Nature Garden Podcast with Carl Steinson, Tom Pattinson, Tom Cadwallender and Steve Lowe.
Let's join Tom Pattinson for some jobs for the week.
Well, these are the jobs I'll be tackling this weekend and over the coming week in my garden. I'm looking at the lawn, and it's semi-natural, but it doesn't have to look untidy, so I'm going to trim it get the mower out and trim it. At present, it has about 3 different species of fungi growing there. There is some moss in it, of course, but the birds are enjoying it, and they're foraging in there for food. That pleases me. But once I've trimmed it, it will lift everything up around it. Some people have a pristine, a bowling green type of lawn. Others have it more natural than I have. I've got the sort of in between, and I'm happy with it. It's a lovely green area. I'll be edging it as well. At one stage during the autumn to winter period, I get the half moon cutting iron out, lawn cutting iron, and I hand go over all of the edges and reconstitute them, put a clear edge on, and that's a super start to the spring when it comes round. If there are any broken edges, I'll take out a turf, probably about something like 30 centimetres square or whatever it takes. At the edge, I'll whiz it round so that this straight edge I've just cut goes on the outside, keeping that straight line going, and fill in with the other and put a little bit of seed on. Put some soil on and a little bit of seed, just switching it around like that. A simple way of repairing your lawn edges. We've had our first frost on the lawn the other morning, and that tells me I've got to speed up a little bit with my salvage operation, which includes taking stuff from the unheated greenhouse, this is potted plants, into the conservatory where they'll survive over winter, which creates space in the unheated greenhouse. Then I can bring some of the tender perennials from the garden into the benches in the unheated greenhouse. One creates space that other plants just take up immediately. It works for me. For example, just recently I've started taking my beloved Streptocarpus collection, that's the potted plant, gorgeous potted plants. They need to spend time over winter away from the cold in the cold greenhouse. It has been down to 0 Celsius on one occasion this week, so that's not good for them, so they come out. I also bring from the garden my citrus plants. I've got oranges and lemons. Those mature plants will come into the conservatory and creating that space in the greenhouse. I'm also looking around at once the leaves have fallen on the shrubs and they're almost off the deciduous shrubs now, I can step in there and I can prune those that need to be cut. Also there's some of the trees there. Birch tree, for example, it's got lovely silver birch with beautiful bark, white bark, but it has quite a few shoots coming out. Stems have developed. I call them feathers, and I'll be able to prune those off now because all the leaves have just more or less fallen, so it has gone into dormancy and it won't bleed. The sap won't flow from the wounds I've made if I get them off now. So that will happen. That will smarten up my silver birch. Well, I've got two actually, but it'll smarten them up. The other thing I'm doing at the moment is continuing to plant outdoor bulbs. Don't leave them in the packet. They're no good in there. They'll just start to shrivel. Get them into the soil. Even if it's very late. I've planted them before in December and been fortunate enough to have spring flowers on them. But certainly they're doing no good in the packets. So I'll get those planted as well. We have 2 or 3 packets of them, and they'll be happy in the soil once they're in. I'm looking round at my winter vegetables. They're doing okay. The leeks are coming on, the Brussels sprouts, the sprouting broccoli, and I have the spring cabbages under it's net covering, plenty of air getting in there, plenty of light, but we've got wood pigeons nearby. And I want to deprive them of too much of my cabbage, my spring cabbage. It's mine. They can have a share of the other greens if they wish. I'm looking at the work on the garden as well. And if it's wet, for goodness sake, stay off the soil. You just do a lot of damage to the soil structure. If you must access it to prune some shrubs, winter shrubs need pruning, or summer shrubs need pruning now, then lay some planks on so you can walk on those planks. You're not destroying the soil. Check daily the fruit and apples. I've got that job in hand. I go into the garage where the apples are. What a beautiful fragrance coming from that ripe apples fragrance when I walk into the garage. But still I'm finding 1 or 2 of the early cookers like eating apples like Discovery. They're starting to go off, just 1 or 2, and now's the time to remove them. There are plenty more sound ones there, and I wish to keep them all sound. Above all, whatever you're doing this coming week, stay safe and enjoy your gardening.
You've been listening to gardener Tom Pattinson, birder Tom Cadwallender from the British Trust for Ornithology, Steve Lowe from the Northumberland Rivers Trust. I'm Carl Steinson, and do check out our Twitter and Facebook, The Nature Garden, and our website, The Nature Garden Notebook. And we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, enjoy your garden and nature. Bye for now.